Welcome to another edition of Boxed In from Yahoo Sports. I'm the one, the only LaJethro Jenkins holding court. We got Yahoo's NBA reporters Seerat, Sohi, and Vince Goodwill in the grindhouse. Today, we're having a bit of an after party for the Last Dance and asking the question, could the Bulls have won a 7th NBA championship? Seerat, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it, you're the winner until you lose, basically. There's no reason for anybody to be coming up and saying, like, this team would have beat them or that team would have beat them when we just don't know. You had one of the best teams of all time. I see no reason to doubt them. Now, I know that they were a little bit older, but at the same time, this team always found a way when they were all connected. If you look at the 6th title season, you could have made a lot of the exact same arguments that you would make for them not winning a 7th title, and they won it anyways. They had a championship pedigree, and any team that was going to beat them, for example, the Spurs. Oh, Vinny's pulled up his mic. He's ready to go. He's smiling.
Right.
But any team that was going to beat them was going to be, not that experienced. The Spurs that ended up winning the title that year, that was their first title. It was a rookie Tim Duncan. Granted, probably one of the best players that Jordan would have had to face, but at a younger age. And I think that guile that they had would have definitely gotten them over the top. And at the end of the day, the Spurs beat the Knicks. That's the Knicks without Ewing, it wasn't like they were, they dominated the West, but they weren't like this insane. They didn't, impress in the finals in the way that would have convinced me, at least, that they would have definitely beat the Bulls. I think you have to go with the team that's proven it.
I think LJ and Sprewell were the best players on that Knicks team or something like that.
Allen
Houston, okay, yeah.
And Latrell Sprewell were the best teams, which ironically would have been the best set of wings that Michael Jordan would have faced that late in the playoffs had that been the case. I'm not here to argue for the New York Knicks. I'm not even here to argue for the San Antonio Spurs, even though Tim Duncan was in year 2 and not a rookie. I'm here to argue for common sense. 4 championships in a row has never been done in modern NBA history. We can talk about the Celtics of the 60s, but we're talking about post-merger. You've won 3. Exit the casino before you lose your money. Now, it's not to take away from the Bulls' greatness that they would not have won a 7th title. It's just an argument for common sense. Michael Jordan was 35 going on 36 with a cigar cutter accident that happened in the offseason of 1998 that severed a tendon in his right index finger, which means he could not grip a basketball. Not saying that takes you from a best player in the league standing to a average player, but when you're an older team, you need every advantage that you can get. You're telling me Scottie Pippen's coming back? You're telling me Dennis Rodman, who left the finals to go wrestling, stays on the wagon for another season, a truncated 50-game season? I need everybody to put away the pixie dust, to put away the fairies, to put away all these things, make it, take it. We never saw Michael Jordan lose, all that type of nonsense. And let's just add some common sense here. Ladies and gentlemen, I will prove to you beyond the shadow of a reasonable doubt, Judge LaJethro Jenkins, that there's no way on God's green earth that the Bulls would have come close to a 7th championship. And here's the other part of it. It wouldn't have diminished their greatness one bit. Going 6-1 compared to 6-0 doesn't change the fact that they were the best team of modern NBA history. But their time was over.
Do you think they can get Pippen and Carter signed?
Absolutely not. Scottie, put it like this. As we saw in the documentary, Scottie Pippen is just as ornery as Michael Jordan is petty. All right. He said, I would rather, knowing everything that came from it, I still sit on the bench and let the Tony Kukoc thing happen. I don't have those regrets. He also said, I'm the guy that made sure our 98 championship season was as difficult as possible because I want to have a hot boy summer. He went out and had a hot boy summer in 97 because he got hurt on company time. He wanted to have surgery on company time. Teammates be damned. So you mean to tell me that without a shadow of a reasonable doubt, that Scottie Pippen, who had been waiting for a payday after signing a bad contract, was going to sign a 1-year deal just so he can add to Michael Jordan's lore? Please.
Sir, what do you think?
Well, first of all, I'd say when you say never been done before as a reason why the Bulls and Michael Jordan couldn't have done something, I think all that would do is make Jordan and the Bulls lick their chops. The idea of having to face the impossible is really the only thing that would have motivated this team. Winning a 4th title, that's, like you said, unheard of other than in the 60s. Other than Russell Celtics, who played when there were like, 4 teams in the NBA. And and there were some quotas going on there. Like, other than that, no one's ever done it before. So to me, I look at that and that challenge. That's unifying enough, especially for a player like Michael Jordan, who is so aware of his legacy. Like, you talk about, a right tendon injury in his finger. That's fine. Like, this is the guy who wanted to play through a broken foot to try to make the playoffs in his second year. And that was, before they really had any shot at it either. He's incredibly determined. If you give him a challenge, he's gonna go up for it. And I also think, like, just for the whole argument's sake, we have to assume it's the same team getting back together. If we're thinking about free agency and losing Pippen, then I don't really know what we're arguing about, because we have no idea what that team would look like. But if you bring those exact same guys back and you actually sign them if you sign Pippen to a reasonable contract, then I don't think you're getting pouty Scottie Pippen and all this drama around the team, because he's going to be content. He's going to say, okay, you know what? You guys paid me. And on top of that, you're coming back into a lockout shortened season where an older team has a little bit of an advantage because they don't have to play 82 games. They only would have had to play 50 games, that I imagine, they wouldn't have really treated the regular season like a big deal, and they would have gotten a bigger break going into that season that summer. So it really, I think, favors them. And at the same time, they still have Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr went and signed with the Spurs that year. I'm not saying that makes the biggest difference in the world, but it's one more thing that is on their side versus a team that ended up being in the NBA Finals.
I remember Steve Kerr hitting some big shots in those finals too. I do remember that.
All right, what we're not going to do? What we're not going to do here is extol the virtues of Steve Kerr, the 7th man on the team, and say that he's going to be the difference between winning and losing, between living and dying. Thanks, Al Pacino. We're not going to do that. No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that at all. Okay, I have on a shirt. Can you guys see it? It says Ali on it, right? Ali is Paul Bunyan, but Ali lost fights. Ali lost to Ken Norton. Ali lost to Joe Frazier. Ali was a shell of himself on the back end of his career. It didn't diminish his greatness. He just stayed in the ring a couple of fights too long. Michael Jordan has turned into Paul Bunyan in everybody's eyes. He's the greatest player of all time, no doubt. But when we say, oh, he could have dunked on a 13-foot rim and shot from 35 feet. Did you guys look at the 1998 finals? From an efficiency standpoint, from a leg standpoint, Michael Jordan was ready for retirement. He was ready to go. So to say that he was going to have the same motivation, to say that he, as this 5th MVP campaign, he wasn't the player that he was the previous 3 or 4 years, even from his comeback. Like, the drop-off has started. So he wasn't even the same efficient player. And here's the other part of it, guys. Scottie Pippen was done. Whether he was happy, unhappy, or whatever, Scottie Pippen's star days were done by that point. And we can't assume that just because he came back that he was going to make the All-Star team or an all-defensive team or be an MVP candidate, because once he left Chicago, that never happened. Or once basically leading past that 96-97 season, he was not that same player again. So Michael Jordan at his best needed Scottie Pippen to be somewhat close to his best for them to be successful. Scottie Pippen was a shell of himself in Houston, a shell of himself in Portland. So we have to look at that situation accurately. And to the other part, there's a guy in San Antonio named Tim Duncan who would have been the best player Michael Jordan would have faced in the finals. And Tim Duncan is not Karl Malone, and he's not Charles Barkley. We've never seen Tim Duncan make the big-time mistakes on the finals level that we saw Malone and Barkley do. So San Antonio was not going to beat themselves the way that the Utah Jazz did, had the Bulls even made the finals.
Even in the second year, you think second year Tim Duncan is the best player he's ever played?
Even in the second year, absolutely. In a 50-game season, to the larger point of those games started around late January, early February, if memory serves. That means that you're having to cram a bunch of games into a very, truncated sort of schedule. Mm-hmm. I don't think that helps, because that Bulls team was tired in 98. They would have been tired going into 99 as well. Like, how many old teams have we seen get younger with an offseason? Right. Old teams get older. Old teams don't get younger. Like, that. This is a young man's game, and the Bulls were no longer young.
They would have had 3 months to rest. So, it's not like they'd be coming in after, like, I know that championships wear you down. Going from June to October, that's not really a rest. I think we know that after seeing the way that the Warriors and LeBron has had to, load manage in order to keep making these runs. But they would have, starting to play again in January is so different from starting to play again in October. That's a whole 3 months where these guys would have been a lot hungrier to play. Now, if you're going to tell me that Michael Jordan would have been motivated to win, I don't really know what to say to that. If there's anything we know about Michael Jordan, whether his skills would have been diminished or not, and he would have been a little less athletic, he would have 100% been motivated, because at the end of the day, there's nothing that man loves to do more than win, and there's nothing he hates more than losing. If you give him 3 extra months and you give the Bulls 3 extra months to stew on this, and they're not going to go hard for 50 games. It's not like all these other teams would have been trying to, get the number 1 seed and all that stuff. They would have been confident in who they were. They would have rested down the stretch. They wouldn't have, tried to cram all these games in. Now, and you also would have had a healthier Scottie Pippen going in there. I know that he wasn't the same player he was, but in Houston, he played 50 games and played over 40 minutes per game. That's unheard of now, especially for a player his age. There's no way he would have been.
How did he play, Seerat? You can play hard and you can play long. It don't mean you play well. Scottie Pippen never made an All-Star game after 1997.
That's because he never should have gone somewhere else. He was at his best when he was with Jordan. If anybody exposed himself throughout, after 98 on that team, it was him. And I understand he had back injuries, but it was also a matter of fit. He was in the perfect situation in Chicago, and he would have stayed in that situation. He would have been healthier. He would have been able to give Jordan a little bit more of a break, which is one of the reasons he was so tired in the 1998 run, is because Pippen was hurt and, Dennis was all over the place. Now, granted, Dennis might be all over the place again. That would probably hold. But you're also going to have a much more balanced roster in terms of rest going into those finals, and going into the playoffs. Let's just look at the playoffs that year. They're not losing to the Knicks, and those Knicks beat the Pacers. Now, I know those Pacers took them to 7, but being taken to 7 doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't translate to the next year. We see it over and over again in the NBA, where we assume that a team that got taken to 7 is weak. The Warriors got taken to 7 by the Rockets and then pummeled them the next year.
Let's move to closing arguments. So start with you, Vince. We start with Seerat first. So start with you, Vince.
Judge Jenkins, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if we were to argue that the Bulls could have won the 1994 championship as a four-peat with Michael Jordan as a leader, I would much rather make that argument for you. A younger Jordan, a prime Pippen, a Horace Grant, still a younger, hungry team. I would take that four-peat over a 1999, almost March Madness style NBA season, where the Atlanta Hawks made it to the actual second round in the NBA playoffs in 1999. And the New York Knicks, well, while they were an 8th seed, they were not an 8th seed in a traditional sense. So if Michael Jordan's going to miss time during a regular season where 50 games are of the essence, we're not sure that he's going to come back turning 36 years old during that season to be the Michael Jordan the Chicago Bulls needed him to be for the long run. And once again, Scottie Pippen was done, and Dennis Rodman only played 30 games past 1998 for 2 teams. There's far too many variables here, ladies and gentlemen, for us to assume that the Bulls would have won a 7th championship. Too many things had to go right, and just saying, well, it's Michael Jordan. That can't be our only reason here. We need empirical evidence, and as the wonderful orator that Seerat Sohi is, she did not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the Bulls would have done anything other than suffer the same fate as the Larry Bird Celtics or the Magic Johnson Lakers or the Isaiah Thomas Pistons. When your time is up, your time is up. What happened to the Bulls was that they literally left the casino before people realized that they had robbed it.
Your floor, Seerat.
Sorry, I got some nice Law and Order vibes there from Vin. I appreciate that, the dedication to the art. First of all, I would say it's Michael Jordan. It's pretty strong empirical evidence in and of itself. We all watched The Last Dance, and I understand that the man gets mythologized a little too much these days, but at the same time, there's a reason that exists. The guy finds a way. The Bulls find a way. You're giving these Bulls 1 year older.
1995. Yes. Wrong.
Go ahead, Seerat. She has the floor, Vince. You had your chance.
Come on, Vince.
Come on, bro.
Come on. Objection. We've got you got 6 months of rest for these guys from June to January. They don't have to do anything. Now, they never had a break like that in any of their championship runs. And I know that those 50 games would have been crunched up, but it's not like they would have gone full throttle and even played in all 50 of those games, at least not the main guys. So you got Michael Jordan coming back, well rested. Now, Dennis Rodman, yeah, he didn't have a lot of success later in his career, but he also, he was in a perfect situation for him with a perfect coach and guys that understood that, he needed to have a little bit of space. Now, that's not a very common thing in the NBA, but in a situation that he was in, I think he still would have thrived despite what happened later on in his career. And I think the same is true for Pippen because of the position that he was in. For him to try and go and reinvent himself after all the injuries and at the age that he was, yeah, that was tough. But him coming back after 6 months off on the same team, doing the same thing he's done for his entire career, they would have been fine. They would have been fine. They would have brought back everybody else. And they have this incredible motivation to be the only team in history, other than Russell Celtics, that have won 4 titles in a row. That, of course, they're already mythologized, but that beyond a shadow of a doubt would have made them the best dynasty of all time. And on top of that, if you bring everybody back, you don't have the same tension that you had in the 98 finals or the entire 98 season, really, where everybody's wondering what's going to happen. I'm sure if that's the actual last dance, they're probably fine with it. And the other thing is they're all paid after that too. So they're not worried about these little things. Pippen isn't a huge problem. And, everyone's satisfied. Everyone, I guess, except for probably Jerry Krause. So that I think, would have been a much smoother season. And I think they would have appreciated it after being away from the game for longer. And at the end of the day, like, the championship pedigree wins over, at least until it stops winning. I think you always have to give credit to the team that had done it.
Wrong.
I've come to my conclusion. Seerat, I do agree with you. I think if the Bulls were the same Bulls, they would have won. However, the point that Vince made about him being as ornery as Michael was petty, I do not see Pippen coming back. And also, going off empirical evidence, Pippen was not the same player. And Michael needed Pippen, obviously. We saw he scored, 45, 1-1, I think, in Game 6 in order for them to beat the Jazz. And do you need that type of Herculean effort from Michael throughout a full season, even a partial season, 50 games? I just don't see it happening. I have to rule for Vince. You made a great argument, though, but I have to rule for Vince. Just based off empirical evidence. and the reality of the situation, you know what I'm saying? Any final comments?
Well, I think you have to assume that Pippen's back, just for the sake of the argument. Probably isn't, but for the sake of the argument, yeah. But I accept the theory.
Well, thank you for listening to Box In. This is another episode. We are here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Congratulations, Vince, on the win. Hope to catch you guys later.